Let's now go into the Law of Moses in a little bit more depth so that we have a fuller understanding of what it was all about. We've already noted that there were three broad types of laws: moral laws, ceremonial laws, and social laws. So let's look at each of these parts in depth now, starting with the moral part, summed up in the Ten Commandments. When the people of Israel were led out of captivity in Egypt and across the Sinai desert, they had no real understanding of God. Their relationship with Him was still very fresh at that point, and without a true concept of Him, they still had no real concept of absolute good. They didn't have that reference point yet. What's more, because they had just come out of a pagan culture in Egypt where the demonic gods behaved like humans or worse, they were used to being surrounded by immorality, and they had been given no real insight into holiness or righteousness by those Egyptian idols. In short, because they didn't know the good apple, they couldn't recognize their own moldiness. Because they didn't know the absolute light, they couldn't recognize their own darkness. The people of Israel were largely ignorant of their own sin. The purpose of the moral part of the Mosaic Law then was to show them what absolute good actually looked like. It was designed to show them the good apple and to show them absolute light. It was in fact to explain to them that God was holier than they could ever have imagined. His moral standard, His benchmark or fixed reference point was beyond anything they had ever known or even conceived of. The Bible records the sense of awe that fell upon the people around the time that the Ten Commandments were being given. It says that when His presence was near, they stood at a distance, trembling with fear. Yet, after showing them the standard, God stunned them even further by declaring that His own level of righteousness is what they needed to aspire to. He said, "Be holy because I am holy." In other words, forget the moral standard that you saw in Egypt and in the pagan cultures all around you. That was darkness compared to me. This is your standard. I am your standard. You must become like me. In revealing the moral part of the law, God revealed a massive gulf between His standards and the people's standards. Isaiah vividly describes the chasm by saying that next to God's white-hot holiness and stunning purity, our own goodness suddenly looks like filthy rags. He says, "We are all infected and impure with sin. When we display our righteous deeds, they are nothing but filthy rags." It's very much how a midday sky suddenly makes a 5 a.m. sky look like complete darkness. It was such a troubling revelation. No human being could possibly hope to attain the kind of holiness that God has, or the kind of righteousness that He was talking about. The Law of Moses didn't just reveal that man was a little bit short of God's standard and needed to do a little bit better. It revealed that man was completely and utterly morally bankrupt before a God whose standards he just couldn't meet no matter how hard he tried. Man was separated from God by an impassable chasm of sin. He was without hope. For example, the Ten Commandments told them that they could never lie. And there is not a single human being who can go a lifetime without lying. Everyone has lied. It's in our nature. The Ten Commandments also demanded that no one ever steal or dishonor their parents or become envious of their neighbors. Well, these are things that human beings do. We just do these things. All human beings have lied and stolen and been envious and gone against their parents' wishes. As the Bible rightly says, for everyone has sinned. We all fall short of God's glorious standard. We just can't help it. It's part of our sinful nature inherited from Adam and Eve. That is a huge problem though, when God is looking for moral perfection, saying, "Be holy because I am holy." How could anyone ever hope to be as holy as God? Things would get even more troubling because God then explained to the people that if anyone broke His law, the punishment would be death. If anyone ever lied, stole, coveted, dishonored, or broke the Ten Commandments in any way, they would have to die. You see, God is so blazingly righteous that not a scrap or a shred, not even an atom of sin, can exist unpunished in His universe. If even the smallest speck of sin remained in His universe, God would no longer be perfect. He would no longer be holy. He would no longer be good. It's because God is so good, so perfect, and such a holy judge that He must destroy all sin from the universe. No sin can remain. And so anyone with sin in them must die. And because all humans have sin within them, all humans must die. This is a very important concept, so forgive me for repeating it. Because we sin, we must die. Death is our natural destination. You see, people often think that a good God would never send anyone to hell, but it's exactly because He's good that He must send people to hell. God's goodness doesn't let you off the hook, it keeps you on the hook. Let's think of it like this. Imagine that there's a murderer who is caught by the police one day and brought before a human judge. Imagine there are lots of witnesses to the murder that come forward to testify against him. Imagine that he even admits it. He's undoubtedly guilty of this crime. Now imagine the victim's family are sitting there in court waiting for the judge to pass sentence. Imagine they're waiting with bated breath for justice to be done for the sake of their loved one. And then imagine the judge starts to crack a smile and says, I'm sure you're a good person really and you didn't really mean it. Now get out of here, young scamp, I'm not going to punish you. Would that be a good judge or a corrupt judge? It would be a corrupt judge, of course. Letting sin go unpunished like that, a good judge would see that justice was served. A good judge would actually be dangerous to that criminal. And it's the same with God. A good God is dangerous to sinners. His goodness and holiness means that justice must be served and sin must be destroyed. So if you have sinned, and you have, then He is duty bound to punish you. Once again, His goodness makes Him dangerous to sinners like us. Remember when Susan discovered that Aslan was a lion in the Chronicles of Narnia? Oh, said Susan, I thought he was a man. Is he quite safe? I shall feel rather nervous about meeting a lion. Safe, said Mr. Beaver. Who said anything about safe? Of course he isn't safe. But he's good. He's the king, I tell you. If you've ever lied, then you're a liar, and God has to destroy liars because He's good. If you've ever stolen, then you're a thief, and God must destroy thieves because He's good. That illegal MP3 file you downloaded, that bit of chocolate you took from the refrigerator, even that's enough sin to warrant your judgment. Safe? Who said anything about safe? God's holiness is terrifying. Is it any wonder the Israelites in Sinai responded to His presence with trembling and awe? It's a part of God's character that we're not too comfortable with, so we often try to ignore it. A.W. Tozer wrote, "The vague and tenuous hope that God is too kind to punish the ungodly has become a deadly opiate for the consciences of millions." He also rightly said, "We cannot grasp the true meaning of the divine holiness by thinking of someone or something very pure and then raising the concept to the highest degree we are capable of. God's holiness is not simply the best we know, infinitely bettered. We know nothing like the divine holiness. It stands apart, unique, unapproachable, incomprehensible, and unattainable. The natural man is blind to it. He may fear God's power and admire His wisdom, but His holiness he cannot even imagine." In fact, God's perfect holiness is so dangerous to imperfect beings like us that when He was preparing to give Moses the 10 Commandments, He actually warned the people to set up a perimeter around the base of the mountain and not to let anyone go past it. He told them that if any sinful human being went through that perimeter and came into contact with God's holiness as His presence rested on the mountain, they would instantly die, like a fly hitting an electric fly killer. Later on, a man called Uzzah actually experienced the truth of this when he touched the Ark of the Covenant where God's presence resided. He instantly dropped dead. This kind of perfect purity was stunning to the people. It struck them with a fear and awe. They had never witnessed anything like this. And again, God was asking them to be that perfect too? Impossible. The people of Israel had deep problems.